What is up, everybody? Unrested back again, and today on our JFAQ we're going to talk a little bit about diets. A lot of questions that I get in my emails, inbox, PMs, and Facebook is all about, can I do this diet, that diet, or some other super special diet? Vegetarians, vegans, people doing a lot of protein for their bodybuilding type stuff. Can they do it out here in Japan? And I'm pretty much going to answer yes to just about everything, but I'm going to do this with a little bit of warning because a lot of the food products that you can get in Japan don't always have every single ingredient listed. So for a lot of you who are vegan, who I know is a very, very special diet, you can't have any animal byproduct in it at all, sometimes it's a little bit iffy. It can be done though. You would just have to ask around, make sure what you're getting does not have any sort of eggs or extra oils or stuff like that. Those are some of the hidden things that they don't always list on the ingredients in the different cans and stuff that you'll buy. And what's really important is I want you to realize, please, this is important because it seems to be something that people overlook all the time. All the ingredients on the back are going to be in kanji that you probably, unless you've already studied Japanese, speak fluent Japanese or high level JLPT 2, 3, 1 levels, you're probably not going to be able to read that kanji and know what the heck it is. The good news is that once you do learn only like maybe a handful of kanji, you'll be able to read every single thing listed on the back, such as tampaku, which is protein. That being said, let's go into a little bit of each diet. I think what I'll do today is I'll start with vegan, vegetarian, and then protein, high protein. Okay? I guess that I'll kind of list a little bit of each. Of course, this is not going to cover every single diet out there, but I'll do my best. Starting with vegan, like I said, the big thing you got to watch out for is products that do not list full ingredients on the back. You probably just want to steer clear of them. Oftentimes what they're doing is hiding calories. People are big calorie counters in Japan, and they will count every single calorie of every single thing they eat, and people stay slim, trim, and fit here. On average, your average Japanese person is a very, very healthy looking weight. They tend to stay that way up until their 70s and 80s. Obese people in Japan is a very, very rare thing. Now, of course, I'm not counting the whole active sumo wrestler population. That, of course, has a totally different mindset as to the weight that they want to gain. I'm saying the average Japanese person in general tends to stay slim, trim, even beyond what some people would probably call emaciated in some countries. It's considered pretty much healthy weight here. That is because when a person in Japan does become even slightly overweight, they've probably entered a level of diabetes. If a person even has like a little bit of a beer gut, they're probably bordering on being diabetic here in Japan. On average, the most typical Japanese person tends to have a pretty fast metabolism, and the fact that they were raised, I should say, grew up with very healthy diets played a big part into how their fat cells developed. If you look into or research just a little bit about how eating when you are young helps a lot with staying healthy when you are older. So if you've eaten a lot of very healthy foods when you are young, you will not grow into a very, very fatty person with a lot of high level fat cells and stuff like that. If you've stayed on a very, very low fat diet when you were young, you'll find your fat cells do not mature into hard to maintain cells when you are older. And that being said, vegan, it can be a tricky thing in here. It is something you want to ask around. But the good news is, yes, there are vegan restaurants due to the fact that Buddhism and Shintoism plays a role here in Japan. Some restaurants are linked to that aspect, but others just outright want to stay vegan. There's a lot of Indonesian and Indian, as in Asian side, Eastern Indian, type restaurants themed here. Everything from vegan curry to anything else you can probably imagine. Of course, this is going to be specialized restaurants and mostly tend to be in large city areas and not in the countryside, quote unquote, inaka areas. Moving on to vegetarian, a lot easier to do in Japan, especially if you are a pescatarian, which means you can also eat fish. Obviously, fish is abundant and everywhere in Japan. That being said, if you are allergic to fish or allergic to rice, living in Japan can be very difficult. Many people have actually written me about being allergic to fish or rice. It can be difficult. You do need to ask when you are getting different aspects because that will surprise a lot of Japanese people if you tend to have those allergies. If you do not like eating fish, well, it's something you will probably learn to adapt to if you decide to live here long term. That being said, any time that you want to be vegetarian, it's not seen as that crazy in Japan. Vegan is a little bit extreme. Even for those that follow a very strict Buddhist code, being vegan is a little bit extreme. It's not frowned upon, but people will be a little bit surprised that you are that strict with your diet. I think a really good J-vlogger to ask is Regan. I think his channel is just called Regan in Japan. He is a vegan. And so if you have very strict questions about the vegan lifestyle, I highly suggest you check out his channel and feel free to ask him questions. I'm sure he would be happy to answer. The man is super healthy. You can tell just by looking at him. That being said, vegetarian, a lot of easy ways to get things like eggs, salads. Of course, you can get many a dish in Japan with no meat or pescatarian type diet, which is fish as far as your protein. Easily in many restaurants in Japan. It will not be hard to live a vegetarian or pescatarian lifestyle here. Moving on to protein, this is where we kind of get into a little the same trouble as vegan. Not that it's hard to find protein in Japan, but there are some proteins that are very difficult to come by. For example, turkey. You're not going to find a lot of turkey. I think Costco has turkey, and if there's another place that has it, I do not know. And that only comes once a year when it's getting close to November or December. That being said, if you follow a very strict high-level protein diet, do be ready to shell out some bucks. Protein is not cheap in Japan. You can, of course, get fish quite cheap, but things like steak and even things like chicken wings, chicken legs, a little bit expensive compared to American prices. Now, some people coming over from Europe tend to tell me, Scott, you don't know what you're talking about. This stuff is super cheap. For example, I have a friend from Sweden. He says all the food in Japan is crazy cheap. So while Sweden, you must have insane prices on all types of food. Anyway, that being said, I would say if you want to stick to a very high protein diet, I myself in the past was big into bodybuilding. Now I just work out just to stay in shape. That's all I really have time for, is to keep myself slim and trim. I don't really try to build any muscle anymore, as you can tell. I used to stick to fish quite a bit. One thing I don't know why a lot of people overlook is just how great sushi is for bodybuilding, especially if you're doing a build up or you're doing a gain rather than a cut. I mean, white rice is great for that. Sushi's great for that. Now, the thing that you're going to find that's really quite difficult to get your hands on is complex carbohydrates. For example, brown rice, wheat bread, super hard to find in Japan. Brown rice, not so bad as wheat bread, but still, genmai, as it's called, brown rice, is frowned upon by the Japanese. For some reason, they see it as a lower class of rice, even though it's less processed by man, making it healthier for you to eat, and is a complex carbohydrate that won't fatten you up quite so quick. On the other hand, wheat bread is damn near impossible to find. I am not going to lie to you, white bread is far more prevalent than any other bread that you will find here in Japan. That said, though, there are bakeries who will make specialty orders for you, so that's highly what I suggest if you want to stick to wheat bread for your diet. I hope that helps you a little bit with different types of diets that you would try to face here in Japan when coming over. If diet's going to be something that holds you back from living here, then I highly suggest Japan is not a place for you to live long term, possibly only to visit. You will learn over time to adapt to the Japanese diet. You may come here finding that you don't like a lot of the dishes, and slowly over time, they become some of your favorite, as they have with me. That being said, I hope you like what you saw here today. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. I am unrested.